Hi, my name is Ashley Francos, and this is my informative speech. Have you ever thought about what you would do if you had a limited time to live? If you were diagnosed with a terminal illness? Most of you would probably answer that question yes, and list things like skydiving or spending time with your loved ones. Not too many people would realistically think about the possibility of being preserved and coming back to life. That is a realistic thought, and it's called cryogenic preservation. Cryogenic preservation, also known as cryopreservation, is essentially an attempt to save people's lives by freezing them. It is being used to preserve people who cannot be saved by today's medicine and technology, in the hopes that in the future there will be something that can help them. This time, cryogenic preservation is a scientific experiment. Cryopreservation entails a lot of information. There's an interesting background to it, and the science is very advanced. The process of the preservation is not close to perfection, and there are pros and cons to it. Slide. Some background on this process will help the explanation of it. The process has theoretically been around since early 1900s, and physically, according to Robin McKee, cryopreservation started in 1967 when Dr. James Bedford was frozen. And you can see that in this picture. Slide. There's an organization called Alcor, which is a leading cryogenic preservation foundation. They are a non-profit organization founded in 1971, and they're located in Scottsdale, Arizona, according to their website. In 1982, Bedford's body was moved to this foundation, and it's still being preserved, frozen there to this day. Since he has been preserved, thousands of others have also chosen to try it. The process is done immediately after death. This is so that the brain will still be functioning. Certain cells and even brains have been frozen before, and they've been reheated and they didn't show life until then. So scientists do know that it's possible to freeze something and it be reheated. They use liquid nitrogen to freeze the bodies. The expectation is that keeping the bodies at extremely low temperatures will cause their body parts not to decay and eventually be functioning whenever they are unfrozen, and most likely decades from now. Alcor states that with many advances in modern science, such as DNA mapping, stem cell research, cloning, and etc., the possibility of living a longer, even following the event we now refer to as death, is becoming more realistic with each passing day. This process has the potential to be an amazing thing for the human race. Unfortunately, since we are not far enough into the future, there are some downfalls of cryopreservation. The main thing we don't know is if it's going to work. This will be unknown until at least decades from now. Eventually, one day, when we become more medically advanced, the scientists of the futures will get to explore the unfreezing of humans being preserved. Another large problem in this process is the costliness. In the past, the families of the preserved individuals paid for the process in increments as they were already being preserved. This was causing financial failures for the foundations, so they have changed the payments drastically. Now when someone wants to do the procedure, they actually have to pay the money before they die. Unfortunately, the cost can range anywhere from $80,000 to $200,000, according to Keith Veronese in his article about the economic downfalls of cryogenic preservation. They obviously use this money for the upkeep of the preservation, but if any of their funds are not used, the money is planned to be given back to the patient when they are revived. This is called a revival fund. Slide. Now, although the cost seems to be a large con, people do not have to be rich to become preserved. In Jill Pantosi's article, she writes about a woman who was just frozen in January of last year. She was a 23-year-old student who was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, and she went online and created a fund in hopes to raise enough money to be preserved. She was successful and is also being preserved at Alcor. Before death, Kim said, "This is the last thing I can possibly do to fight for another chance, and if it does happen to work, it'll be incredible." Slide. There are many people that are becoming interested in this process. A lot of people are beginning funds for it, even if they aren't suspected to die anytime soon. There's even celebrities like Simon Cowell and Larry King who have started their own funds. Also, people have even started funds for their unborn children. So in conclusion, cryogenic preservation is a growing subject. The further in the future we get, the more advanced it'll become, and more people are going to be preserved. And eventually, just to think that people from all different time eras could be living together at the same time. So thank you for listening, and have a nice day. And this is my audience.